and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Conversations. I am your hostess, Marla Martenson, and I'm with Carol Howe, who is an acclaimed author, counselor, and internationally recognized master and teacher of A Course in Miracles. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is in the Course, and I thought this was so interesting when I first heard this. It's about the word sin. The Christian definition, of course, we all know what it is, what a sin is, but the Course has a different outlook on that. So tell us what the Course says about sin.
Well, basically says we need to skip the idea of sin because sin implies guilt. Mm-hmm. In other words, sin, as most people understand it, think of it as committing a sin means you have inevitably and without recourse to change ruined something. Primarily, we think we've ruined ourselves. In other words, what basically it says is you're going to be guilty forever because you have committed a crime that can't be reversed, can't be undone. And the Course would say, you know what? That's very arrogant. The idea that your little ego mind and your little behaviors and words can ruin the universe, can somehow rip apart unity, it's like, give me a break. Of course, it's much more poetic than that.
Right, yes.
That's what I say. So it says, you have terrified yourselves, and you've gone to sleep. It makes an interesting statement in the beginning part of the text where it quotes the Bible, and it says, it does a little bit of that in the first few chapters, and then it stops because it's not supposed to be some big correction of Christianity or something, but it does use that language in a very different way. And it says, in the Bible it says Adam fell into a deep sleep, and nowhere does it say specifically that he ever woke up. So it says, you all are in a sleeping state. We could call it a deadened state, or you could call it a sleeping state. And when you're in a sleeping state, you don't really know what's going on. So because of this, we fear, because we're now in a place where we feel unsafe and all sorts of weird stuff goes on and so on and so forth. And we do things that seem to be irredeemable in a way. We have bought in hook, line, and sinker that we are guilty, that we have ruined something for all eternity. And the Course would say, you can no more. Your little hallucinated, with no substance, body personality is going to ruin all of creation? Absolutely not. That is absolutely a very arrogant statement. And the Course is very clear about that. To feel guilty is arrogant. Now, to recognize that you've made a mistake, absolutely. And we've made gazillions of those. But mistakes don't ruin anything except your own peace of mind. In other words, there's nothing substantive that your mistakes have ruined. And people could say, but what about if you killed somebody? Haven't you done something irreparable? Well, you've done something to the body personality. But then later on it says, but the body personality isn't what you are. And besides, other people in situations like this are co-conspirators, shall we say. In other words, no one can be killed without, at some level, their own permission. In other words, there's way more beneath the scenes going on than we're aware of. It would be, since I live in the land of Disney World, anybody knows that all the stuff that goes on at the attractions, there's this massive underground batch of machinery that makes all that work.
All right.
So that if something goes wrong up here, on one of the rides, this is not primarily where you look to see what went wrong. You go down underground to the machinery that's actually driving things.
That is amazing. That's a great analogy. And so that's very interesting what you said, that if somebody kills you, you have had some kind of agreement. So I just pictured all of those massacres in Africa when those tribes would come to another tribe or state or people and kill millions. You think that was some kind of a contract for that whole town or village or
country? Here are our three options about the way to look at the, quote, disasters in the world for any of us. You truly, really are a victim and you can't do anything about it, which is that would be awful if you believe that. Or to think that things are random, and if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, then that would lead to feeling very unsafe as well. That's what most people believe. The other option is I have a hand. In my experience, I just haven't known what it is or how I'm having a hand in it. So that puts you much more in the driver's seat. But, you know, when you're a beginner or just getting into, you might say, metaphysical ideas, jumping right to, well, explain to me how two tribes of people decide to come together and kill each other isn't the right question to ask. The right question is, how come I have unloving, hateful thoughts where I think I would actually like to, I would like to do something like that, you know, if I were, you know, I'm so furious. You know how people think that? It's like, so much better to take a look at what's going on with me when I'm ready to take someone out. I might not follow through with the behavior, but the fact that I'm so furious with them, I could. I need to take a look at that. So don't jump ahead to what's going on out there. Start to go inward instead and say, what is it that drives me when I'm so furious that I could, you know, take somebody's head off, kind of thing.
Well, here we see it in road rage, because I think last night on the news or on the internet I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw, a road rage incident that lasted for miles, and there was video, and people get so angry if somebody just doesn't go fast enough or they come into the lane. They're ready to, you know, and people have shot people. So, yeah, it can happen much smaller level, of course.
Here is a related topic, and that is the ego, the sense of personal self, which is not what we really are. That's just kind of like a little Halloween costume we're wearing temporarily. That ego mind loves conflict. It feeds on conflict. Conflict is its food. Without conflict, the sense of personal self kind of fades away, and of course what replaces it is something much, much more fabulous. But if you think you are a separate little personal self, subject to all sorts of things happening to it, really, how can you feel safe when you think that primarily what you are is a physical body? It can be burned, shot, run over, cut, poisoned, destroyed, and it's like, if that's what you really think you primarily are, then you have good reason to feel very unsafe, and you should just go hiding under your bed from now on, kind of thing. That's not what we are. But the idea of sin, of committing a crime that can't ever be undone, is arrogant. So we need to say, okay, well then, what is the deal? What about past things and so on and so forth? Here it is. And this is wonderful, because here you've got quantum physics and the new biology and metaphysics. Everybody agree. The only moment that we're actually experiencing is right now. Right now. Like whatever happened like 1 nanosecond ago, as we're talking to one another, has dissolved into, you might say, a field of probabilities. Our past no longer exists. So guilt and sin is predicated on the idea that everything that happened in the past is somehow all piled up here in a big storeroom I call my past, and it can come get me at any moment. It's like, absolutely not. There was something on public television about a year and something ago called the memory hackers, where this is now coming at it from a neurological point of view, where it says the past doesn't exist. That if you decide to think about an event, like if you want to drive yourself crazy and think about this horrible thing I did, you know, fill in the blank, it's not like a bookshelf, you know, where you would reach on your bookshelf and you would pull out your book and you would open it up and there's this very accurate portrayal of whatever happened, and then you put it back and it stays there safely until you think about it the next time. There's none of that retrieval system, and everything just dissolves. And if you decide to think about it again, and there were photographs down through an electron microscope so you could see, you are growing new neural connections every time you decide to think about that. Look at the implications of that. We can literally recreate memories about our past. We can recreate things in a way that's healthy, in a way that's healing, in a way that brings us to a much greater sense of peace of mind. So we need to stop thinking that our past is doing something to us. It's not.
Well, yeah, but it's still there. Like, you can bring it up, but it's, I mean, just in the brain, the memory of it, just the memory of it, right?
It actually is not stored any place like we used to think, like that book on the shelf that I pull out. If I decide to think about it, and it's why every time, and this has been proven with all kinds of experiments, every time you remember something, most people might possibly know, they reconstruct it.
Yeah, yes. It's just as if it just happened, right? It just is
kind of like a telephone game, that you pass around, and pretty soon it comes out at this end, bears no resemblance to what somebody. Well, we're actually continuing to do revisionist history all the time. So nothing that we think, oh, I've got a really accurate memory about this. There was some marvelous work done by Scientific American saying, and it's too long to tell you what the experiments were, but it was like proven right there in front of you. Nobody can remember accurately, even when it happened 5 minutes ago. Really?
Yeah.
So, which means, you know what? Let's say you feel like you didn't do a good job raising your kids. Rather than year after year after year after year beating yourself up over, I didn't do a good job raising my kids or whatever it is, you go, right now, in this moment, this is the only experience there is. At this moment, I love my children.
Yes.
Myself. I'm here to do the best I possibly can under any circumstances or whatever. And when you do that, the interesting thing is you're building new neural connections, you're changing your body chemistry, you're doing all kinds of things, and you can begin to prove to yourself that although physical things may be changing, like you might be living in another house than you did at some point, but our ability to ruin things doesn't exist. In other words, which is why sin is kind of a quaint little idea that we can let go of. We have made tremendous mistakes, and those mistakes have ruined our peace of mind. It's ruined it in that it's drawn that veil across the truth of us. So it would be like, oh my God, I've ruined that yard that I mentioned, that's got the trees and the bushes and the grass, and oh, I so wish that I could get to that. It's like, it's there, and I have pulled a veil across it with my idea of guilt, and I made a big mess of my life, because to feel guilty about anything, as compared to, well, that was a mistake that I can correct going forward, is a prayer for punishment. Because punishment and guilt are two sides of the same coin. So if we want to hold on to the mythology that guilty, it's exactly as if you were down on your knees praying, please ruin my life. Please make my life a mess. Please keep things very small and limited and unpleasant. And the universe, we'll just call it the universe, doesn't say, is that really what you want to order up? It just says, whatever, your wish is my command, kind of the genie in the bottle kind of thing. So
let me ask you something about, kind of on the same subject about people's paths, our paths. So a lot of times we'll feel guilty about maybe if we had a sister, a brother, a mother, whatever, who was maybe got into drugs or alcohol or on the wrong path, and then later something happened to them or they couldn't be saved, and then you feel guilty. I could have done more. What I should have done this. I should have got him into this center or done that. Or we often will do that we'll think that feel guilty about something that we might have done for somebody else. But in reality, I've had to do a lot of work around this self with a lot of alcohol in my family, and my brother died of alcohol poisoning at 39, and if I would have only hired a private detective to find him because he was estranged, if I could have called but people have their own path, right? I mean, we beat ourselves up. We can beat ourselves up for years about, oh, I could have done this.
And you know what that says when we stand back and look at it? It says, I, the guilty party, am the one with all the power. I'm the one who got to decide whether you had a good life or not, or whether you had the right things happen to you. You apparently were powerless and had nothing to say about the quality of your life. I'm responsible for all of it. And you think, oh, well, I don't think so.
Right.
So it's like everybody is the author of their own experience, and we are players in other people's dramas. Mm-hmm. But don't for a second think that anybody besides your brother or your mother or anyone else was at the heart of making the choices so that their life ended up the way it did.
Right.
In other words,
and
you were a player in the drama, but you were not at central casting, producer, director.
And I did the same thing with with something that happened with my mom recently. So she's been smoking since she was 18, and so she's one of the ones that just will never quit, and most of her friends have quit and everything. And I tried, so I did a last ditch effort, and I got her a Skype call with a guy who helps people quit, and she had she agreed. She says, okay, well, it would be nice to quit, and then it was like an hour or 2 hours with this guy, and then that was just the intro, and he says, I'll give you a special deal. It would have cost me $1,000 to have her do the program, which was only going to be like 4 days. I said, I'll pay it, and then I said, and then I could kind of feel she wouldn't have gone through with it. I said, we're going to go to lunch and talk about it, and I'll let you know. We went to lunch, and I looked at her, and I said, you don't want to do it, right? And she said, no. And so I said, I did my duty as a good daughter. I feel like I've been a good daughter, and I tried to help you, and you didn't want it, so I can release it now. And she said, So I always felt that, in my mind, should there be something I should be doing? But now I've released her to have her own path and decisions.
Yes, and I want to reframe this a little bit about she didn't want to. You see, the reason why people smoke,
she decided not to
or engaged in any behaviors that's an addiction or a distraction, it's because they're in great pain. Mm-hmm. And they're terrified of having to confront the great pain because they don't understand it. They're afraid it's going to be there forever. They're afraid, that life is going to be ruined forever. So it's wired in from very early at, you might say, a survival level, that to experience this pain is more than they will ever be able to handle. That's not true, but they don't know it. In other words, they're operating on false assumptions. And if ever she were to understand why she smokes, mm-hmm. and somebody was there with her to help her know that the things that the pain is about her guilt. The pain is about the fear that she is a sinner. In other words, sin and guilt and punishment and pain are all a package deal.
But then what about now with smoking? I mean, she's been smoking over 60 years, so how... That's got those chemicals that addict you so badly. They say it's harder to give up than heroin. They've got the nicotine and all the chemicals that they really strong to addict the body. So
and that can all be handled as well. I remember my dad started smoking cigars when he was 20 years old. That's what young men did back then. Yeah. And at some point when he was 80. This is 60 years later. Something just occurred to him in his mind because he didn't talk much about his own internal process, and I didn't know how all those years ago to be involved in that. Yeah. And he stopped cold turkey. Chemicals in the body or not. Right. Never smoked another cigar and did not take up a substitute addiction. It was kind of like, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, something was resolved in him. He just didn't need to do that anymore. And when you change your mind, a lot of the so-called chemical things get resolved as well. In other words, when you start to feel safe and cared for, you're completely rearranging your body chemistry. It is the important thing. So should she ever see merit in, or should the time come when she decides to do her own self-discovery work, which is at the root of the smoking addiction in the first place, then help with something like this could certainly be an assist.
So
but I know people who have stopped drinking, stopped smoking, cold turkey. That was the end of it, period.
Wow. So as far as people who have maybe a parent or a friend or whatever doing that, our guilt of not helping them or being able to, we've just got to heal that in ourselves and know that that's their own path, right?
Yes, and you need to go, let me see, what is it that I really am feeling guilty about? There's really something going on with me. Am I afraid that I've been not a good daughter? Am I afraid? In other words, the guilt is always about something that we feel is going on within us, that we've ruined ourselves. You know, so you watch somebody from the world's perspective, like ruining themselves, and it's kind of like, stop ruining yourself, because then it will stop triggering this fear that I've ruined me. So that everything is, if we could see that the world is a mirror, what's happening in it, how the people around us are behaving, is constantly giving us diagnostic material. I like to think of it. It's kind of like you stick your body in an MRI to see what's inside your body. Your world around you is like a great big diagnostic MRI, where it's showing you what's going on in your whole thought process. So you can go, that's not very satisfactory over there. This gives me some very valuable information about where I need to look inside and change my mind. Not to change my basic nature, because your basic nature is always love and light. Nothing can change that. I can go to sleep. I can forget about it. You know, I can draw the drapes, however you want to see it, so that I'm unaware of it. But that doesn't mean I've ruined it, which is why sin needs to be dropped from the vocabulary, and owning that we've made mistakes. But we've made mistakes in our thinking. We've made mistakes in our believing. Therefore, we've made mistakes in our behavior toward ourselves and other people. Mistakes are for correcting. Sin be for punishment. We're already feeling punished, which is why we do the things we do. So we want to clear that out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And my mom, she's very sensitive. She feeds the homeless for 6 years, twice a week. She helps her neighbors. So she's always feeling, I feel so bad because these homeless and they're sleeping in here in the woods, and this one's on drugs and this one's looking raggedy today. And then, her neighbor is a hoarder, and she's came home crying because she doesn't like to see her friend living that way. And she's always feeling, and then I'm like this spiritual seeker, so I'm like, well, okay, that's their path. If she wants to be a hoarder, you can't come home and cry. I mean, so I'm like trying to sympathize with her, but she's really, so I think with all of my studies and stuff, I see that I've become a little calmer and I used to always be that kind of want to save everyone, maybe coming from alcoholic family, codependent. And I would get on a bus with somebody and take them downtown to where they want to go. If I meet a stranger, what's the direction? I wouldn't just tell them. I'd get on the bus and I'd have to save everybody. And then as I got older and doing a lot of work on myself, I'm like, okay, everybody, let everyone. They're adults. They have the same. They have access to the same information I do. They can make their decisions. Leave everybody alone, kind of. You're there to help if they ask, but don't. So it's.
And a lot of times we want the people around us to stop looking like they're suffering and having difficulties and so on, because that stirs up the places where we still are suffering. It's like, don't anybody around me remind me of what's going on with me. Right. So I'll get them all fixed, and then I can be comfortable. So much of what drives us is I'm trying to be safe and comfortable.
That's right. That's right. Like,
not
why do we?
fun.
Yeah.
We just need to understand it.
Very good. Very good. That's like, let them go on their own path and do what they want to do. Everybody doesn't have to live the way I do. And yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I'm like this health nut, and I'm doing my cleanse, and why are you eating that crap and drinking Diet Coke? And I'd be worried about people, and it's like, you know what? You want to drink it, enjoy.
That's right. We actually have enough going on with us that needs our attention.
That's right. Take care of myself.
That we would do well to go, what is it that makes me tick? Where am I uncomfortable? What wounds are still unhealed in me? I have a lot going on that I could occupy my time with and not be trying to save everybody around. Now, that doesn't mean not following your intuition to do the kind things that you're called to do.
Right.
There's a difference between doing them out of an intuitive sense that this is right and trying to fix their behavior so you can be comfortable.
Great points.
Two different motivations.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for this conversation on sin, and always great to see you. Thank you so much. And you guys leave a message below and let us know your experiences and what your thoughts are. And also, Carol's links are below. She has great courses and classes and books and everything. So go check her website out. And much love to everybody. Bye.
Thank you, dear. I look forward to our next visit.